Hey everybody, I am here with Hofstra new head coach Jamie Franco. Jamie, how are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
Good man. How's everything going with you?
Going good, buddy. It's been a while since I've seen you. Haven't really talked to you much since you got the head coaching job, so I figured let's get on a little interview here and get it going. I want to talk a little bit about, we kind of wrestled together growing up in the old days of the CAA. You were at Hofstra, I was at Drexel Dragon, so we kind of maybe not a rivalry, but we were wrestle each other every year, see each other at conferences. We were different weight classes, obviously, but I just want to hear your experience about wrestling in the CAA and how time has evolved since being a volunteer coach for Hofstra in the EIWA, and now you're the head coach. So what's it like being CAA? First of all, how it's different from the EIWA, and kind of your progress up the ladder, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think when the CAA was formed when we were there, it was a smaller conference, but it was making a lot of progress. It was actually, I felt like at one point was a tough 16 conference. With Hofstra putting a lot of guys in the national tournament, producing All Americans, and you had Drexel and Binghamton was on the uprise, and they were really
Yeah.
taking off, and they were producing All Americans every year as well. And then you had Old Dominion, that was another team that was always in the mix and throwing out a lot of qualifiers and a lot of tough guys. And it just felt like it was a conference that we were battling it out. It was one of the conferences that obviously Hofstra was on top of, but it was one of those things where like getting later and later in the CA era, like Binghamton obviously is one of few, was beating us in dual meets, and ODU was those dual meets where I remember everyone was always coming down to the wire.
Yeah.
I just felt like every year it was everyone was gunning for us, but it was one of those things where everybody was super competitive, and it was great to watch everyone grow at the same time. It was kind of sad to see it broken up, but to experience the EIWA as a athlete for one season, to understand like how important it was to be in a larger conference, made sense at that time. So
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I did 3 years in the CAA with you, and I did 1 year with the EIWA as well. I think that's when I had 18 teams back then because Rutgers was transitioning, so they were EIWA for at least a year I was there. So I had an 18-man bracket, and it was just the depth of the bracket was so crazy. To have, I wrestled guys like Nestor Tafur in there, and Anthony Perotti came through, Joey Napoli. They were all kind of top 10 in the country there, and I didn't see any of that in the CAA. So like you said, it's really cool to see deeper brackets and to see how, the conference tournament plays out in the end of the year.
I mean, I went from being a conference champ to taking fifth and still qualifying because, again, we had Nashawn Garrett. I had to wrestle Terrell in the semis, and then I had to wrestle, Cruz in the Conci semis, to get knocked down. So it's like to have multiple All Americans in your conference tournament. Like I said, that's what showed like the depth of a larger conference helps, right? And I think that was the biggest thing. In the CAA, I watched teammates, succeed by having a tough bracket and be like, hey, okay, if I take two or three, I'm going. And then I saw kids take second and not go. And, I think that's tough with the smaller conferences. If the weight classes aren't deep, obviously I think there's some smaller conferences now, like the ACC, and then the IVs will be a smaller conference, but you're going to have some deep weight classes that you're going to qualify 3, 4, 5, depending on the the weight class. So
Yeah, and I just love the EIWA just because, as you know, it's been around since what, 1905, 1906, something like that. So it's so much tradition in that conference. And last year, there were, I think, two or three weight classes that qualified 7 or 8 guys to NCAAs from the EIWA, which, like you said, the CAA was only 6 teams. So they're bringing more competitors to the NCAA tournament than the whole CAA conference had as a whole, which I think is really, really cool to be a part of, right?
yeah, no, I think it's real important. Like I said, but at the same time, it's a meat grinder. I think the Big Tens, and again, we got the EIWA to a point where it was a grind. You're going through 4, 5, 6 matches 10 days before the conference tournament, and I think that was the big deciding factor. I think besides getting some extra bids by splitting the conference up, but at the same time, some of our best wrestlers were going through a meat grinder 10 days out, and it was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, if someone is a fan like me, I like kind of like the meat grinder. A lot more upsets happen, injuries do happen. So you get a guy or two that maybe wasn't supposed to qualify in there, qualifying, which is always cool to see from my end. But um, yeah, I want to talk about a lot about how you were at Hofstra Wrestling, as we mentioned, and kind of worked your way up the ladder. So talking to some coaches that have been head coaches now or even assistants at their alma mater, there seems to be a lot more passion, and drive in what they do. Um, do you feel that's the case with you, being the head honcho now at Hofstra?
Yeah, I think, for me, didn't matter if I was the assistant, the head coach, even when I was at Columbia, like, my passion for Hofstra has always been extremely high. Like I've always wore my passion for Hofstra on my sleeve. Some people are like, why are you so like, why do you care so much about Hofstra? You're not there anymore. But I think for me, I think what's different than a lot of coaches, right? Like or where they wrestled, right? Like, where they wrestle in college, they lose their passion a little bit if they're not involved in the program. And for me, it was 5 years as a wrestler, 2 years removed, but working down the street from Hofstra for an alum. So still involved with the guys a lot, and then getting on staff for the next 8. So, for me, it was kind of like, 14 years or so. Like I said, I was in Long Island since 2009, the fall 2009. So the last 14, 15 years have been Hofstra wrestling. So for me, even when I was at Columbia at a rival school, my passion ran pretty high, but I had explained, like, I spent almost as much as your guys' life at this school as you guys have been alive, right? You have some 17, 8-year-olds on a team. And like, I've done 14 years there. You were 3 when I got there, So yeah, my passion runs really high for Hofstra. And, I think everyone knows that. And I think Hofstra knows that. And, I'm glad I was able to make a transition and come back and take over something I've always dreamed about.
Yeah, you're kind of similar to when I was talking to Coach Papadakis about it. He kind of, like you said, wears his passion on his sleeve, and he was all in for Hofstra, and he's still there now, which is nice. So I think having you kind of in the mix for the head coaching gig back at, when it was open, I thought you were a perfect fit just because you do have that, they call it the Hofstra pride. You do have that pride, pun intended, right? You wear that on your sleeve, and it's go time for you all the time with Hofstra, which is really cool to see.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's something when no matter what university, I was at, unless I had to wrestle against them, it was one of those, I was always rooting for them. So, and they always knew that. And a lot of those guys checked in. I checked in on a lot of the guys, and then, the administration has always been super supportive. The other coaches and stuff have always checked in on me, and we have a pretty close knit group. So it's always good to stay connected and then be able to, like I said, come back and feel like you're coming home. So.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned the transition to my next point. You did spend 1 year at Columbia, underneath Coach Tonelli, who recently moved on to Virginia Tech. Um, so talk to me a little bit through what went through that decision, and, kind of some things you picked up as a head coach, from someone other than Coach Papadakis there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if everyone knows, but yeah, Zach was my assistant coach when I was at Hofstra. So his first year of college coaching was my first year in college.
That's right. Yeah.
I was recruited by another coach, Joe Dubuque, obviously, was at Hofstra before he left. When Joe left, Zach got the job, and it kind of was like history after that. He obviously was a really close, coach, and like I said, for 5 years, and then even after that, became a close friend, and we lived, 10 or 12 blocks away from each other for the last probably 3 years before I switched over. So he was always a guy I leaned on, both from coaching, experience, just kind of like, hey, what should I do here? What should I do there? What do you think about this? So it's always something like in the works where it's like, hey, if it ever makes sense, and we can work together, like we have to. And last summer he had had an opportunity where he had a position, and kind of flirted it by me and didn't think I would leave. And it wasn't something where I wanted to leave Hofstra, but it was one of those things where I felt like for me it was the best case scenario where I could leave and grow to be a head coach. Right? He always knew that I wanted to be a head coach. That was always my gig. It was, I was going to work my way up. I didn't really want to travel too far away from the tri-state area to move up the coaching ranks. Like, I think my situation was kind of unique to start as a volunteer, and like I said, get to an associate head coach and then become a head coach without really moving too far. So that was always been a big key to me, was staying close to my family and everything like that. So when I had the opportunity to go with Zach, his thing was basically like, hey, who knows what the timeline is, but it could be 2, 3, 4 years. You'll work under me, and I'm going to train you every way I can to be a head coach. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from Joe Nord, who was on staff, and Chad Walsh as well. Just some different ideas and different views, and I learned a lot from our guys. And I think that was the biggest adjustment, learning 40 new guys in, hey, you're in the middle of preseason when I took the job. So it was quick. But I learned a lot. And I think that was what got me ready to be the head coach. And like I said, it was a lot sooner than we thought. It was 9.5 months to I had the opportunity. I was the finalist on the Columbia job and obviously finalist and got the job at Hofstra. So it was, it came quick when Zach was like, "Hey, like I'm gonna go take this job. Are you ready to be a head coach? Because I'll prep you." I've been prepping you, and I know you're ready. So he's like, "If this is what you want to do, we'll go full force." And then, a few weeks later, Hofstra opened up, and then it was interviewing for two head coaching jobs, which some would think it's really easy just because you're applying for the same position. But as you're trying to apply for two different universities with two different needs, it got difficult at times. But I got good at interviewing, I guess. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it's Columbia is a little bit of a different animal than Hofstra, right? Just being in the Ivies, being inner city New York compared to Long Island. Um, so picking up some things there from Zach Tonelli, I'm sure you can carry into your new role at Hofstra here, right? So what was like a thing or two that he may have taught you just to help you get as a new head coach, really?
I think, when it comes to like technical and stuff like that, we kind of run from like a similar, he was an edge guy. I was trained by Jersey guys at Apex with all edge guys as well. So our
Hmm.
technique, and then like again, Zach trained me for 5 years. So right, I basically sponged as much technique I can get out in all that time. So I think technique wise, it was something I was very similar, and it was just, for me, it was an easy transition, and we could bounce ideas off each other. But for me, I think the biggest thing I learned, I think, was just his ability to adjust. I think I had him as a young coach, and I know again he was a hard nosed Big Ten coach coming in to a mid major program like Hofstra, and he trained us as if we were in the Big Ten, and it was you got to wrestle like the Big Ten, you got to beat the Big Ten guys to win, and that's what we did. And you go to an Ivy League and it is different, right? You're getting a different kid, right? You're getting a very smart kid. We got a lot of blue collar, smart, talented kids. But at the same time, the way I watched him adjust as a coach from when he coached me, 10 years ago to now was probably the biggest thing I learned of being able to, you have to be able to adjust with the kid and the time. And I think that's where some coaches might struggle a little bit was, we did it my way and this way, where Zach does a very good job at getting the best out of each and every kid the way they need it. And I learned that really fast. And like I said, the way he coached me was different than how he coached almost every single kid on the Columbia team. So for me, that was a little bit of an adjustment, just the tone of practice, keeping a very positive tone, no matter what, win or lose, if it's, in a match, whatever, just getting the guys to believe that, hey, it's all right. It's part of the process. All right. We're gonna get the next one and just build the guy up, constantly build the guy up until we get him to the finish line. And I think, we had a lot of success. Obviously, we were dealt with a lot of injuries, but we still had a great year. And I think, as the ball was going in the wrong direction at some point in the season with our tough schedule and the injuries were piling up on us, we trusted the process that we put in place, and the guys trust it, and they, the guys that were able to get healthy got healthy. The guys that were struggling figured out how to start winning towards the end of the year, and it led us to a great fourth place finish and two champs and national semifinalists. So it was good, and that was, like I said, one of the biggest things I learned. I think that I'll bring with me.
Yeah, it's cool you got that unique experience of Coach Tonelli as a brand new young coach out of college, like you said, hard-nosed Big Ten guy, and maybe as a Ivy League coach, I don't want to say softer, but like you said, he adapts and made it wasn't his way. It's kind of, hey, we'll do a little bit this way, do a little bit that way to get the best out of the wrestlers. So I think just following Columbia for the past few years, that was evident to see of, like you said, the fourth place in the conference is really, really good to do. And you're having a national semifinalist, All-American with Lennox Wolak there was incredible. And he deserves all the props he can get. But switching back to Hofstra here, you came in with a roster that's pretty underclassmen heavy. Bunch of freshmen and sophomores. You had one NCAA qualifier last year who's now recently graduated a heavyweight. Um, so what's your roster situation look like? What's it going to take to get these guys to that next step?
Yeah. So I mean, before I left, I was part of that recruiting class coming in. We had 13 newcomers. So we've always been roster capped at Hofstra. At one
Hmm.
point, it was 20. It was up to 24 during COVID, but during COVID, it was tough to really get up to 24 when you had a lot of walk-ons that were not willing to walk on during COVID, when you just didn't know what their parents' job looked like, and stuff, and what everything going
Hmm.
on. So, we were pretty low at like 22, 23. So, we got to the point where we got up to 24, and then, some kids graduated, obviously COVID and stuff, and we are getting some extra years and transfers. And then we got a roster cap up to 28 last year. So we brought in 13 newcomers. So like you said, one was a grad transfer, another one was junior college transfer, but for the most part, it was mainly true freshmen. So brought in, I thought, some good talent. Again, two freshmen I thought did a really good job. That really stuck out was Noah Tappy at 49 and Jake
Yeah.
Slack at 65. Two guys that were thrown in, and I was a guy that got thrown in as a true freshman too, and it's difficult, right? It's difficult. You kind of get some early success, especially because you're expecting to win, and then the losses start piling up, and how to stay positive, and it gets tough. But like I said, those two guys did a great job, and we had another true freshman in the lineup at 84. He was an NHSCA national champ when we got him, and but again, wrestling 184 as a true freshman is a tough task, right? So we got a lot of young underclassmen that were in the lineup. Obviously, I'm going to do my best as we go on to try to get those guys their red shirt and bring some other guys in and try to get some upper class experience if we can on the transfer portal when things change, or if we ever get some last minute guys here. We have a couple guys still floating out there, but we are getting two upperclassmen back. That were out all last year. Chase Lardy was a 33 pounder for us, started the year before, transferred from Ohio State. And
Yeah.
Justin Hoyle, who plays at the EIWAs, he had a season-ending injury early on last year. Like I said, he plays the EIWAs the following year, and he's back. So we have another kid who had a season-ending injury too that will be in the mix at those weight classes, who had a lot of success and beat some nationally ranked guys as a true freshman. So we're going to be getting some guys back and getting some guys healthy is the biggest thing for us. So
Yeah, I think you guys could have a nice little lineup there from 33 with the Artie, 41 Hoyle, and 49 Tapia if he wrestles this year. I remember Tapia had a nice win over, I think, Jordan Williams from Oklahoma State last year.
yep. So like I said, we had there's another kid in the mix down low too. You got Joe Spraccio, who was,
Yeah.
a champ, and like I said, he had some decent wins against some ranked guys that were, ranked a lot this year. But he had a shoulder injury that held him out. So he'll be in the mix of those lower weights. And they said Jarius Clark plays at the IWAs at 57, and like I said, 65. Slotnick did a great job. I think we'll see him do well again. If we can, if there's we got some upperclassmen that maybe will be in the mix of that weight as well. And then, like I said, Ross McFarland placed in the conference as well, so we'll see him up top as well. So we got some guys that can wrestle. Like I said, it's my job to get those guys and to peak at the end of the year. I think that's the main focus. Keep them healthy. That's obviously the main goal, and get them feeling good and get them to the end of the year. Those upperclassmen. I think we're can have a decent year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I saw that the job was still open come June 15th, where coaches can kind of start calling the next class, the class of 26. Wasn't sure if that would affect a team like Hofstra so much, but look at your roster, like you said, it's all a lot of underclassmen, with some experience moving up a class this year. Did you feel like missing that deadline is going to be much of an effect for you, or are you still kind of on the trail now, catching up as you go?
And I mean, on the trail, I guess, for me, being in the tri-state area, knowing a lot of New York, New Jersey guys, recruiting for Columbia, recruiting for Hofstra, having my club for the last 10 years, I knew a lot of kids that were coming through that I have, 5 to 10 year plus relationships with their
Yeah.
parents, or, they were at my camps when they were kids. So, maybe it wasn't their first or second phone call, but I think the relationships that, like I said, that I have with their family or their coaches that are always going to will help in the long run. Like I said, it's always great when you get that phone call day one. Obviously I was still recruiting at Columbia at the time because I wasn't hired. So, obviously I made some phone calls. Guys are familiar with me, so I think if they like me, I think they like me at either school. So, obviously there's some different needs and Columbia and Hofstra are a little bit different. So we're not always targeting the same kid. We're trying to get the same kid, but like I said, there's some guys that I never and I never negatively recruit anyone. Like I never be like, hey, you don't want to go there. But when a kid tells me they want to go Ivy League and that's what they've dreamed of their whole life, it's tough to go against it. Especially like I said, went a lot of Long Island kids when I was growing up, helping get into college if it was at Hofstra with me or trying to guide them to the right school that fits. And when they were like, hey, I go Ivy League, I would push them to the coaches that I liked,
Yeah.
and that was the thing. Some of my wrestlers that I trained were at Columbia, so I got to coach them, their last year and stuff. So which was a nice thing, So I'm never gonna knock a kid for wanting to reach their stars in their academics.
Yeah, I mean I feel like just because the Ivies have been so good the past decade now, a lot of people are really starting to look into life after wrestling. Wrestling doesn't last forever. Getting that education because you get networking connections. Alumni support is tremendous at these schools, and even schools like Hofstra, Drexel, all these EIWA schools. The alumni support is still there, so you don't need to go to a great, what I call a great, top 10 wrestling program to have success after wrestling, right? And that's kind of what Hofstra and Drexel and Lehigh, all these EIWA schools can provide.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so yeah, I just had a funny vision of you calling a wrestler like, "Hey, it's Coach Franco with Columbia," and then a week later, "Hey, it's Coach Franco with Hofstra. Yeah, how you doing?" Yeah, I wonder
Right.
how many calls you made like that.
Yeah, there's a handful. Like I said, we had a lot of guys that were, on the pipeline that we were trying to get. And again, the timeline was a week. I think when Donnie got announced and from when I got announced was about a week. Obviously, we knew the possibility of both of them happening, right?
Yeah,
So obviously down and being a finalist, I knew it was a possibility that I was still there. There was a possibility that it could have been Donnie and me on staff still, or I was taking over another program. So those guys were pretty familiar. I got that question a lot too from
yeah,
guys like me. Well, are you going to go there? Maybe I said, well, until those opportunities open up, I can't. I can't tell you what I'm going to actually do until I get offered either of the jobs, right?
yeah,
So that was kind of the way I looked at it, and I was going to do my job until my job was done. And like I said, me and Donnie didn't know each other going into it. I've known like a lot of guys that he was mentors to were mentors of mine. We have a lot of close friends and stuff. So for me, it was a good week or two of building a relationship with Donnie. I think which we built a pretty good relationship, and we're hoping that down the road I could help him when he needs help, and I could call him for help, which would be nice.
yeah. It's
So
always good, especially being so close together. Like you said, you're a rock's throw away from each other, which is good. You don't have that luxury on the West Coast. That's an East Coast thing here. Um, yeah. So kind of last thing I had in mind was, what's it going to take to help Hofstra rise to the top of the IWA, and whether that's going to be things that you need to do. Maybe you need a little bit help from alumni, from athletic department, whatever's on your mind. What's it going to take to make Hofstra, be a perennial powerhouse in the IWA?
yeah, so I mean, for us, gotten a lot of support already from some supporters, a lot of alum. They're excited. I think it's one of those things where you know I'm been trying. I'm 10 years out of college. I got teammates that are 12, 13 years out of college now, and it's one of those things where I've been pushing them to be involved, pushing them to be involved, and besides me, they had no other connection to the coaching staff, so it was always a little tricky when I wasn't fully involved. Maybe I was as a volunteer. Then, as I started working up, I, really started pulling some of them in. But again, it's tough where they were at in their life. And I think now they're, like I said, they're all pretty established in their job source now, and they're starting to do well, and they're excited now. I think they're like, this is my housemate or this is my roommate. This was my teammate. This is the kid I shared the room with. So they're showing that they're ready to go, and they're ready. We have an event coming up in a couple of weeks to get everyone back together, and we have a lot of good alumni that are also in the wrestling world, which is nice, to have, one of my housemates that's, a coach at Faith Christian Academy, one of the top programs in the country, and Joe Ravelli, who's on staff at Wyoming Sam, and to get pipelines into Pennsylvania. And one of my other coaches is, one of my other housemates is in Minnesota. So to have all these guys spread out throughout the country to start feeding guys over is always the key, I think, to feed over talent. And then, like I said, to be more involved in the support of donating, and just really being at the matches. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we need the support at matches, which, like I said, being around Long Island for 15 years, I think I have a pretty good network of people that if their kids wrestle for me now or they wrestle for a different college, they support me. So they're always looking to help out and come to matches. So, I'm hoping to see a lot of them in the stands, and I think that will help get our kids fired up, and I think they'll feel it. And I think we have an early home match, and I think I'm hoping to pack out the stands for that and get a lot of alum in for like my homecoming duel, and kind of just run with it from there. Like I said, I think that's going to be success right there. Just getting the energy back in the gym, getting the energy in the guys, getting the guys feeling excited just to compete. And then it's going to take one or two kids. And I think that's always the chain reaction. Again, we've been putting out one or two qualifiers the last couple of years. Had a good COVID year, and had an All American in 2016. So we're still only 8 years away from having an All American, but every year goes, it gets a little harder and harder and harder. So our goal is to start putting more and more guys in there, and then it takes one guy to punch through. And once one guy punches through, it's one of those things where everyone believes in it. I was on a team at Hofstra where everyone believed you'd be an All American because we were doing it. The teams before us were putting 3 guys in the national semifinals, right? We were getting 4 All Americans in a year. We placed top 10, right, in 2007, and obviously every year after that we were competitive, and guys were getting on the podium. So guys were falling short, but other guys were getting it done. And I think for us, it was one of those things where it's like, well, that guy's doing it, he's doing it, I'm doing what he's doing. Why can't I? And I saw that firsthand. I think switching over to Columbia this year, they hadn't have an All American in 11 years, so they had a lot of good talent. Zach coached a lot of All Americans, both at Hofstra, right, being at Wisconsin with his team. They had a bunch as well, just being around them. So he knew what it took, and he knew the talent that we had in the room, and we felt like we had 2 or 3. We still think we had 2 or 3 in the room. That last year we just a couple injuries and a couple things went the wrong way at the tournament, where we could have had 2 or 3 All Americans, and but getting one over the hump and getting it done, I saw what it did to the guys in the room of going, well, that's my brother, or that's my teammate. He did it. Now he just proved to us that we can all do it. Obviously, he's still got another year. He'll be elsewhere, but he'll be at Virginia Tech. But all the guys that went through all believe in him, and believe that they can do it. Now it's going to be a different coaching staff, but it's still the same guys there. So they have a little different energy now. They're excited. They're getting a different look, and it's a little more fresh to them. But like I said, Lennox is still in the room a lot with them. Just got back from Spain, where he took silver in the Grand Prix, and he got off the flight an hour before practice and got right to practice to work out with some of his Columbia guys before he goes down to Virginia Tech. And that's kind of just the brotherhood they built, and that's kind of the brotherhood that it takes at this level, right, to have success for everybody. I mean, again, we can have success with one guy if he just wants to be one guy and not help anyone else out, but usually that's a toxic trait in our sport. But be able to try to drag everyone along with them, no matter what team they're on, I think is the best bet for everybody, and that's something that we're going to push in our culture to really bring everybody along with you. If they're gonna follow the same workouts and the same goals as you, and they're gonna do all the right things as you, then let's bring them to the finish line with us. If they're not same goals as us, then those are guys we can leave behind. But for the most part, let's drag our teammates through it, and it's gonna be more fun when you have multiple guys waiting for you to be an All American and being excited for you, instead of being like, man, I wish that was me. I'm jealous, instead of being happy for them. So
Yeah, I think all great things you said. I agree 100%. A lot of those things kind of mesh together, right? You guys get one guy or 2 guys that start winning, people start coming in the stands. It gets the rest of the team juiced up. They're ready to perform, and maybe you beat a team you shouldn't be beating. And then the momentum rolls from there, or vice versa. You get people in there to the stands, and people start wrestling better, and then it gets guys' confidence up, and then you get an All-American on the podium. So I think all of these kind of mesh together. You just got to find a way to make it work, right?
yeah, so
Yeah, awesome.
that's the key to find and make it work. That's the magic that has to happen, right? To get the right kids on the team, and like I said, get the right support, and like I said, just get the ball rolling. Sometimes it takes a little luck too,
Yeah,
So
and it's probably a blessing, and maybe it's a curse, but having Coach Papadakis there, kind of still in the athletic department, just in a different role, it's a little unique situation to you maybe because a lot of times head coaches take another job, they move on to a completely different school, different state, right? He's still working for the athletic department, just in a various role. Is that going to be good for you? Going to go up to him, get some pointers and discuss things with him, or is
You know,
he really hands off like he says?
and,
I
he's
don't believe him when he says that.
yeah, no, he's hands off. But what's great about his position is that he's in development for athletics overall, right?
Yeah.
And he's been doing that for a couple of weeks, I think maybe over a month now at this point, and it's one of those things where he's out there chasing down money for the department, and he's doing a good job at it, and it's one of those things where more money he brings in, it's gonna trickle down, right? And again, if I need him, and he's showed his support where it's, hey, if you need me, I'm here. If you're good, that's fine. I'm not going to overstep, and it's a great relationship to have. That knowing that he's there if I need him, right? And like I said, and if I got to fall on him to say, hey, like, we got to find a way to raise some money here, or give me some ideas of something maybe you would have done. I can go there for help if I need it. But like I said, I think we got some guys that are really really excited, and they're ready to jump on board, and so I'm hoping to hit the ground running the next couple of weeks here with the alumni, and like I said, our team, we got a couple more weeks of summer training, and I walked into a room with 25 guys training on their own, obviously through the RTC and stuff. And it's just, really nice to see that many guys staying back. When we had a smaller roster and guys graduate at 4, 5, 6, you kind of get pushed down to having 12 or 16 guys in the room. To have 25 guys, because we didn't lose that many. And, it's a nice thing.
Yeah, I love it, Coach. I'm on board. I'm a big fan here. Like I said, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for taking your time. I know you're busy. Meet your alumni on golf courses and whatnot. Every time I text you, I feel like you're on a golf course or something. But
I'm trying.
not something to complain about, right?
I'm the head coach. I can play more golf and out with the alumni. So they always ask me. I always said, no, I got things to do now. It's kind of the important thing to do. So
Yeah, you got a network, right? Yeah. So like I said, thanks for joining me. I'll open the floor. If there's anything you want to promote, push out, anything you want to say, kind of floor is yours. If not, we'll sign off then.
yeah, like I said, we got a home match lined up. We're gonna have a good first half of the season being local at Princeton, and then Journeyman, and then like I said, we got a home duel in November, which I think is always a positive thing for for any team. Sometimes you get on the road until December, and it gets long, and I don't think the fans like it, right? So for us to get it into November, try to get as many high school teams and coaches around, and like I said, you're not running into the high school tournaments at that time, which is nice.
Yep.
So trying to pack the stands with every high school program and coaches and all the parents and alumni to get out, so we can have a good crowd for, like I said, I think we got Sacred Heart and Duke. So both of them will have a lot of Long Island guys as well. So it should be a good homecoming from some of those guys as well. So I think it could be a good opportunity where we have 3 teams with a lot of Long Island guys on it to pack the stands, rooting for all different teams to make a great environment. So
I love it. Yeah, let's bring Long Island wrestling back. It's talking to Coach Papadenos, it's down a little bit. I mean, I don't follow Long Island wrestling much, but it'd be good to see that come back again.
yeah, I mean, listen, it goes up. There's waves, It's
Everything does. I agree. Yeah.
one class is up, one class is down. I think there's a really big wave of young kids firing through right now. So I mean, I think there's a group of middle school kids, a group of freshmen and sophomore that are in New York State that are all going to be rising sophomores and juniors now that are really tough. So I've been keeping my eye on those guys for a while, and I'm like, that this class is going to come through, and they're going to be some powerhouses. So it's there. We just got to get them back. We got to get them to stay home, and we'll be all right.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Coach. That's all I got for you. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
No problem. Take care and talk to you soon.
Yep.